Hello, Wasteland! Yes, welcome back, brothers! That's right, we are here to look at Gaslands UK's Car of the Month competition for June 2023. The fourth season of this competition, my brothers. I am your host, James Hall of JH Miniatures, and this episode has been kindly sponsored by Curtis Fell of the brand new sponsor to this fine competition of ours, Ramshackle Games. Oh yes. Now, if you are not aware of who Ramshackle Games are, you must have been living in a nuclear bunker for the last 4 years, because these guys have been making fantastic resin conversion parts for your Hot Wheels and Matchbox toy cars since the inception of Gasland, since the beginning, since our Lord and Saviour Mike Hutchinson crafted this game from the ashes. Ramshackle Games were right there alongside him, making a fantastic array of weapons, of crew, of extra armour panels, and they continue to just put out some amazing pieces. I mean, they've not just sat on their laurels, they continue to bring out new and exciting things. I mean, just check out the wagon, the Tartan Blast build that they made. You can buy that. You can buy the speaker system for that and have one of your very own. Oh yes, so by all means, check out the link in the description down below. And thank you so much again to Curtis Fell for sponsoring this wonderful community of ours. So, with a sponsor like this, what was the prize for this month? So, knowing the generosity of our regular mainline sponsors, Curtis has provided prizes for first, second and third place of £35 gift voucher for first, £25 gift voucher for second and £15 gift voucher for third. And that is the entire Ramshackle Games website, the store, the brand, the line, everything that they do, including their 28mm stuff, including their scrap Starship stuff. You know, check out the link in the description, because I tell you, he's been pushing that Wasteland dream for years now, and it is wonderful to see. So, welcome aboard, Curtis, and thank you so much, Ramshackle Games, for sponsoring this competition. So, with a sponsor like that, what was the theme for June's month? Well, it's in the name, isn't it? Ramshackle Games. Ramshackle. That's right. It's time to raid the scrap heap in the junkyard and piece together Gaslands races that look like they're about to fall apart. We are talking scrap heap challenge. We are talking junkyard wars, my American friends. That's right. It's about taking rusted, broken down bits of whatever and duct taping them and nailing them and bolting them together to make these beasts of the wasteland. And I tell you what, you boys and girls have not disappointed this month. So, without further ado, let's have a look at everyone who entered. We have had 27 finished entrants this month. 27! So, from the top, we have Daniel Mumford, David Traves, David Bousset, David Goch, Dom Williams, Hardo Pius, Ian Barham, returning fan favourite with his Mantis, Ingvar Niebsen, Jody Sims, John Simpson Wedge, Jorel Bessie, Keith Ambrose, Kev Williams, Martin Page, Matt Morrill, Matt Whittam, Michael Mersey, Nava Fishman Shali, Nick Kitch, Paul Gaynor, Richard Hubbard, Scott Howland, Steve House, Thomas Till, Travis Bedwell, Travis Usner, and of course, Troy Moss. But let's start this month off strong, my friends. Let's start off with Travis Usner's entry. Oh, yes. And when you think of ramshackle builds, when you think of something that's been birthed by a scrap heap, I think this entry has to be at the forefront of your mind, because just look at this. Travis, buddy, you've got everything in the kitchen sink attached to this, I think. Now, we see a lot of this month of the leather straps or the tarp or the sort of the duct tape effects that people have been pulling off. We see a lot of that, but you got some great mixed media here. I love the woodwork, the chain, the rope, the wire, all the different textures. It's really nicely done. I think the scale gets lost a little bit because those ammo boxes at the front with the American star, like military star on, they're the same size as the engine. They're the same size as like the cab compartment of the car. You look at the size of the driver's seats, those boxes are big enough to be chairs. They're enormous. And then you compare that to the little guy on the stretcher and the bicycle. And yeah, like some of the things are just a little bit, they just stand out a little bit as not being quite right. But the ingenuity here is just on point, my friend. Just absolutely incredible. I love it. And this is how you want to start off a month like this. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about ramshackle builds. We are talking about a real Frankenstein's monster of bits from all different cars, welded and bound together. And it's just that desperate hope that it's going to hold itself until the finish line as it hits into things and attacks things. Really nicely done, Travis. And as always, I can't wait to see what you come up with later on this year, because your quality just continues to improve, my friend. And then after Travis Usner, we have, of course, Hardo Pius's entry. Oh yes, my friend, back on form, I see. What a wonderful hodgepodge of different materials and looted and recycled parts. I especially like the handmade pallets you've made at the back using, I can only imagine there's some matchsticks and some lollipop sticks and coffee stirrers that have been snapped up to make those, because those are a real nice touch. What a solid entry. I think the underframe that sort of holds this truck together, considering how low that ground clearance is, I think you've made that a little thick. But I love all the little extra details. I love the stop sign and the dead end sign. I love how you've painted some of the body panels different colours, because yes, that is how it should be done. That is how it looks when you assemble something out of mismatching parts. The rust is really nice, although at times it looks a little bit like a mud effect than a rust effect, but that can come down to the painting. The little bit of static grass to almost give it that impression that this is like a barn find, I think is really good. And I think this is the thing, when you've got a theme like this, there's a temptation to go overboard and put everything on a build. You know, multiple car bodies, multiple wheels and weapons and all different configurations. But this shows you can just keep it simple. I think where it falls down a little bit is just the scale, like that underbody frame, like the size, like that truck bed at the back is massive. That is so much space for a tiny little cab up front by comparison. It's like someone took a regular truck body and put it on a flatbed truck. You change that cab, make it a little bit bigger, and all of a sudden everything looks a bit more in proportion. And I think the little figure on the back, he's a nice touch. But he doesn't add too much to the build, and bless him, he's about 3 colours, isn't he? He's brown, green and blue with his trousers. Maybe, try and get a bit more variation in there. You could put like a little logo or something, like a little suggestion of a symbol or a brand or something on the back of his jacket or on one of his arm sleeves. That would have been really nice. But mate, you've come so far, my friend, and I love seeing, because you always want to do these massive, overly detailed builds. I love seeing you just take your time on a smaller, more intricate build, because this is really good. Fantastic stuff, Hardo. But if we are talking about small, intricate builds, how can we not talk about the finished entrant from one of our newly knighted admin members? Of course, I'm talking about our boy, David Bousset's entry. Oh yes, number 6 of 12, halfway through the year now, my friend. Oh yes. And I tell you what, you're going to have an incredible lineup of cars at the end of this competition, aren't you? If you compare this with the last few months, my goodness. It's going to be a sight to behold when you finish the 12 of 12. And I want to point out for all the boys and girls listening at home, this is the last month that David's entered where he is eligible to win, on the basis of, if you enter the competition, you can't vote, because you can't vote for yourself. That's why when August rolls around, I take part, but I don't vote in August, which is why it's really good that we've got some fresh meat in the admin team. I want to point everyone to all the wonderful metalwork and rivets and nuts and bolts and things that he's done, drilling out holes which would be there representing pieces from other vehicles or things to lower the weight, or just to provide a little screen for the driver to see through. Although that front windscreen, that's pretty short. I mean, unless he's going to like hunch down, it's not really going to provide him any cover, is it? I think the rear engine, but with the massive sort of up front oil fuel system, I think that's a real nice touch, because we, more often than not, we make these builds and we think, right, engine straight in the front of the car, big beefy up front, but the reality is you do get a nice mix of centre and rear end cars as well, so it's nice to see that. The rear exhaust, you're losing me, because I get it. I get that the rear exhaust goes up and down, but the fact that it's facing down is just strange and esoteric. I prefer my exhausts flaring up into the sky where the fire of the wastelands can be shooting out. But what can I say? It's a beautiful build. It is the standard that we have come to expect from you, my friend. And you just continue to just absolutely knock it out of the park. What a fantastic entry, David. What a brilliant entry. I could spend an hour talking about all the little fiddly bits of your builds. But honestly, mate, so good. And I can't wait to see what you continue to push in this competition, because you know August is coming up, my friends, and that's going to be a sight to behold. And then after David, we have, of course, you know what? Let's have a change of pace. Let's see something a bit fresh and a bit new and something a little blue. That's right, we are talking about Ingvar Niebsen's entry for this month. Oh, yes. So let's keep it simple. Let's have, instead of everything in the kitchen sink, let's have one or two things, but painted up just beautifully. Absolutely beautifully. That blue is so eye-catching. I think the cannon on top, because you can see the gradient you've painted on there, that is really nicely done, but not as nicely done as the chipping and the weathering work. Mate, that is so good. But what lets it down is the yellow work. And you look at the front of this thing, you look at the where the front radiator would be, and there's like a tyre texture just above the ram, and you look at those tracks, and it just kills me, because that yellow is wishy-washy and wet, and just the highlights are in the wrong places, and there aren't shadows in the low areas, and mate, it's such a good build, and the yellow just needs more work. Don't get me wrong, I know those exhausts, those pre-model cast exhausts, they're from certain Hot Wheels builds. I know they can be difficult, and I can see you've painted on the black there to represent where the holes into the channels would be. Honestly, you can still drill them. You just have to be careful and then use a craft knife to actually widen the holes so it makes sense. In a case like this, I'm guessing you put those engine exhausts in for speed, but at the same time, mate, some pipe work there would have been so good. But what a solid entry. And going to show that you don't need every single thing, every single material and texture and nut and bolt, and you can just keep it simple, get some beautiful welding work on there, get a beautiful blue paint job on there, ruin it with a horrible yellow paint job. No, I'm just tugging your chain. Fantastic work, Ingvar, and mate, just keep swinging, because this looks so good. I love it. I absolutely love it. There was a moment where I glanced at it, I thought, is this one of Molinaro's pieces? Because it's so bright and colourful. But I tell you what, that paint, that chipping on the blue is so nicely done. Mate, you got to keep that going. You got to do more, because I love that chipping. I want to see that on all your builds now, Ingvar Niebsen. Oh, yes. And then after Ingvar Niebsen, we have the returning fan favourites, bringing the ram into Ramshackle. That's right, Nick Kitch's entry, and his enormous stripped-down monster truck of a build. And I think this is one of the things that got lost on a lot of people, because when you hear Ramshackle, when you think junkyard, you think, right, I need to put every door, every hood, every car panel and truck trailer bed and all this stuff. I need to put all this rubbish on my build, when the reality is, you look at any of those competition shows from back in the day, and more often than not, they would do these really stripped down, just the bare frames and just whatever they needed to get the job done, just slap it together and just race. And that's, I tell you what, my friend, I'm looking at the custom axle work, I'm looking at the custom frame that you've made for this, and it's a work of art. I tell you, I absolutely love your work this month, Nick. I think the Warhammer skulls, and I'll always feel this way, they're too big. They're 28mm scale. The Wasteland is smaller. If you had like a little person that would ride this sat in that seat, you would immediately go, yeah, those skulls are too big. And that's the thing. I'd much rather see a person in that seat and all the skulls taken off than have all the skulls and have an empty driver's seat. But it does come down to personal preference as well. But then you look at the rust work, you look at the welds, you look at the wonderful exhausts you've put on this thing, and that beautiful engine with some lovely council design parts. I'm sure I recognise those filters on the top there. And look at that ram. That ram is just the star of the show, isn't it, Nick? My goodness. That's there to do some damage. Although I'll say this, boys and girls, when making ramshackle sort of scrapyard builds, don't feel like you can't paint a team colour onto the frame, because looking at those competition shows in the past, they would always do that. You would always have the blue team and the red team and the orange team and green team and all that, and once they finish building it, the next day before the race or before the challenge, they would spend like half an hour with spray cans and paint, and they would just paint it their team colour. And you can do that, and you can make it look effective. But at the same time, rusty, hard-coloured sort of metal has an attraction all of its own, doesn't it? Love it. Absolutely love it. Fantastic work, Nick. And then after Nick Kitch, we have returning favourite from last month. That's right, we're talking about Dom Williams' entry. Now, Kev, let me just ask you about your kid here. Is it Dom or is it Dominic? Because I keep wanting to say Dominic Williams, but I'm not sure if that's right. Tell us in the comment box down below. But I tell you what, Dom, this is an absolutely fantastic entry. I love the use of actual metal. Like, I'm guessing that's from like a coffee can or maybe it's very thin plastic. I'm not sure, but to make that sort of duct tape silver plastic look, like the silver tape look, really nice. I think the really big panels that you've put on there, they're not so great, and I would remove those. The thin rectangular strips that look like tape, they're fine. They're absolutely fine. I love the fact that the spoiler at the back of this thing is just 2 traffic cones and then a spoiler off another car stuck on it. Like, yes, that is exactly the look and feel we're going for this month. The engine just drowning in chains, like, mate, that is lovely. That is great work right there. However, the engine also doesn't have that much room to breathe, and sadly one of the things it does point out is some of the areas where the build falls down a little bit. Like, the base body of the car it's been changed a lot. Like, you've cut out doors, you've cut out body panels, but you've painted it all one gigantic solid colour. And it doesn't matter if it's the front bumper or if it's the rear or the headlights or any, you've just painted it all the same colour. Mate, you could go around that with some, like a black wash or some watered down black paint, and just pick out some of the cracks and crevices and get in there with the fine work. Don't just splash wash on the car and call it done. Actually work the wash into the areas where it's needed, like around the front bumper there, because those little areas, those little crevices are just crying out for it, and it would look so good with just that extra step. But mate, it is a fantastic entry, and the little people are painted up really nicely. Maybe some highlighting work on there, but hey, you're still getting used to this scale, and it is a hard scale to work in. So this is really good stuff, my friend. Just keep pushing, keep going. All right. Great stuff, and I can't wait to see what you come up with in July's competition. But then after Dom, we have, of course, Jody Sims' entry for this month. Oh yes, Jody, what can I say? New to the competition and a brilliant first entry. It is a lovely, ramshackle, rough and ready build, isn't it? Now, there's a lot of 40k parts here. There's a lot of orc parts. There's the Imperial Guard heavy flamer on the top there. And that's fine. You know, if that's what you have to start with, that's okay. What I'd say is you should spend a bit more time on the paintwork on this, because although you got the silver picked out nicely, you've got this kind of mottled greeny brown that I'm guessing it's a green car originally that's sort of rusted over time, but it also kind of looks like it's meant to be like a military camouflage. And this is the confusing element to it, because if you're going for that, this is a vehicle that's been left out in the elements, that's going to look different to if it's just green and brown, browny orange sort of splotches everywhere. I mean, right now this is just three colours, isn't it? It's black and silver and brown. Okay, there you can see the little bits of green, but they're kind of lost in amongst this. So how would we take this to the next level? You get another colour like a red, and you like a bright red, like a candy red, and you pick out some areas like maybe the engine block or the blower or the, you know, aspects of the heavy flamer turret, or you name it. Just little bits of red would just really jump out on this and elevate it. But at the same time, those are some basic tyres. We like seeing things that change, you know, the Hot Wheels or the Matchbox wheels, because, you know, we've seen them 1,000 times. You gotta change them up. You gotta do something. Put some spikes on there. Put some chains. Put some dirt and filth and some sandy colours. But I'll tell you what, my friend, great first entry, and absolutely keep coming back for more, because this is what the competition is all about. It's about having fun, and it's about trying new things and pushing yourself. Oh yes. And after Jody, we have, of course, Troy Moss's entry for this month. So from one extreme end of the scale to the other. Oh yes, we've got a whole mix of colours here, don't we, my friend? Oh yes. Now, I love how you've incorporated a plane and a car together, because that's a real violent harmony that you've managed to achieve there, and I like it. I love how elements of the actual plane sort of mechanics have been chained to the engine of the car at the front there. I think that's really neat. I think that the fact this is a six-wheeler is just monstrous. The rocket launcher is a bit big and a bit bombastic, and, you know, maybe something smaller would have been a bit more suitable. You know, still keep that kind of like single giant rocket look, but just scale it down a little bit, or even just replace it with like a heavy machine gun or something like that, and it would have been a little bit easier on the eye. The duct tape additions, again, really nicely done. I think you guys have all done great with that this month, because that is such a cool technique to see. And I didn't expect it. I figured everyone would just resort to old faithful chains and rusty weld lines, but no, absolutely fantastic stuff. The ram is inspired, but you got a bit of conflict there with, you've got the plane's own sort of white and black sort of hazard markings, but then you've got these red hazard markings over the top of that, which I guess would make sense if this is something the crew have added to it to sort of make the build their own. But look at the predominant colours here. It's yellow, isn't it? So you'd figure they would add that to it instead to sort of tie it in. Or maybe put some yellow on the plain body. I mean, this is the thing. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty here, boys and girls. And it's all the little extra steps that you can take to sort of really elevate a build to that next level. But mate, what a combination of parts. What a wild, wacky wasteland build. I love it. Absolutely love it. I'm not sure how much I trust those oil barrels to sort of stop that plane fuselage from just collapsing off the side at one rough turn. But mate, great stuff, Troy. Absolutely fantastic stuff. And then, of course, we have returning heavyweight champion. That's right, John Simpson Wedge's entry. Oh, yes. And my goodness, if we were talking about an abundance of details and fiddly little bits, how can we not go right with John's entry this month? My goodness. you've had fun, haven't you, fella? You've really sunk your teeth into this month's build. I mean, even just the board with all the lettering on there, the different prices for different things. No refunds and no tabs. Prices on demand. And the little Amazon Prime box. I think the little printout Amazon cardboard boxes, I think the material's too thick for it. Maybe if they were made from paper, it would have been a bit easier for you. Because you can paint paper to look like cardboard. That's easy enough. But mate, you've really outdone yourself. My goodness, look at the amount of stuff going on here. I think at times it can be a little visually confusing. Like, I know inside you've got what looks like a billboard on the inside of the truck with like an old advert for like a wrecking company or something like that, like roadside repairs. But I can barely see it. I can just see a woman's head and some lettering and maybe the suggestion of like a crash. And it's like, mate, it's knowing when enough is enough and you can kind of call a build done. All the figures are wonderful additions. The giant magnetic, almost like a moped crossed with a grabbing claw. Because I want to say that's a new Sentinel leg from Warhammer's newest Imperial Guard range. So it's a little bit identifiable as 40k. But the paint job, the rust work, which again, mate, that rust work. Oh baby, that is some good paint right there. It ties it together. Where this needs pushing now is those sharp edges, and you're doing all the right moves with the building and the paint job. It's just tightening up those lines. So using masking tape, that checkered plate just below the shop front, it is wibbly wobbly, and that could have been done with some tape, or just if you just slow down, take even more time to do it, because checkerboard patterns are hard, and to do them right, it does take time, and it does take you slowing it right down to do it. But at the same time, it is big, it is bold, and it is a beautiful build. And I love the little banner at the back, with the duct tape flowing in the wind, mate. Absolute 10 out of 10. Lovely work this month, my friends. As always, I cannot wait to see what you come up with for July's competition. And finally, my brothers, let us have a look at the work of another newcomer to the competition. That's right, Steve House's entry. Oh, yes. Now, Steve, I can see you've got red in your eyes and you've got the thirst for blood because, my goodness, this is a gory build, isn't it? With heads on spikes. And we do love a bit of blood and a bit of gore. There is nothing wrong at all with that, my friend. What I'd say, however, is where this build starts to fall down, because the build itself is fantastic, but the paint job, where that starts to struggle, is you've done this overall kind of beige dry brush on everything. The engine, the wheels, the body panels, every single square inch of this has been dry brushed with beige, and it kind of blurs it all together, and it just makes it all feel a bit rushed towards the end there. If you just selectively dry brush that around the wheels and parts of the body where it would make sense for dust and sand to be kicked up, or if you just focus it around the wheel wells or around, like, because you got the driver and the driver's compartment, and it's so heavily washed and dry brushed that things start to blur together. It's hard to identify the driver's legs from the seat, from the gearbox, from the floor of the cab there. But then at the same time, even the minigun barrels, even they've been dry brushed. And I'm telling you, man, those miniguns, they're a bit flat and they're a bit lifeless. We know what miniguns look like. They have the 6 barrels. But at the front, you've just got these 2 solid caps. Drill some holes. That's an easy way to do it. But, let's point out, there's some real positive aspects to this. Like the actual concept behind the build and the execution. Mate, that looks good. Yeah, it looks really good. I love the little 13 that you put on that side mirror there. And more often than not, hold your hands up, guys. We typically forget to put wing mirrors on our builds, don't we? We get so focused on the armour and the weapons and the wheels and all that we just don't do it. So the fact that you've put a 13 on there, the fact that you've kept a wing mirror on there, the fact that you've added all these really cool details, like the driver's gear stick being like a welded chain, or those wonderful reflections in those front headlights. Like, I know it's a little small and it's a little rough, but the work is there and the effort is there. And mate, honestly, fantastic stuff. And I want to see you keep coming back. I want to see you come back next month in August, especially in August, my brothers, because you know that I'll be taking part. And I always send out my finished build to one of you lucky boys and girls. But no, brilliant stuff, Steve. And I can't wait for your next build, my friend. Oh, yes. So, before we begin, my brothers, we have to announce the wooden spoon for this month. And it is a somber, disqualifying wooden spoon. That's right. I want to take a moment to have a look at Martin Page's entry for this month. Martin, oh, my friend, you break my heart, because you glue your entry to a scenic, dioramic base. And we've all seen this kind of base before. It's one of those great big Games Workshop like Titan bases. It's an enormous oval disc, and mate, it just doesn't add anything to the build. I mean, ultimately, unless the competition month specifically states that dioramas are allowed, then any kind of scenic base is not allowed. And I know there's been some back and forth as to what counts as a scenic base and what counts as an aid to Gaslands. And I would like to compare your work, Martin, this month with Michael Mersey's entry, because I think it's only fair to point out that this is what we would consider an acceptable base for a car to be glued to and not to be disqualified for not being a dioramic base. And it's not because Michael's base here is just sort of a muddy brown and the central focus is the vehicle and the ox. That's part of it, but Michael's base here is just a simple flat rectangle that is there to aid and support the build in Games of Gaslands. Okay, you can look it up in the rulebook yourself. The game does state that you can mount your cars to bases to aid in playing the game. And you look at Michael's build, it's only got, the one axle at the back. It's all being supported by that great big ram at the front. And ultimately, where are you going to put a template? Are you going to have it touching the little hooves, the little legs? Is it touching the head? So a base here makes sense. Your build doesn't need that base. Look at the work in progress photos, my friend. It never needed a base. And this is what's so upsetting, Martin, because when you look at the quality of this is a really good build. This is a really solid build. I love all the little details and all that scrap metal work you've got going on there, and bits of sprue and Warhammer bits, and it almost looks like there's a little carrier at the back that looks like a hopper that sort of collects the scrap and bits of cars that have blown up and feeds them in. But the reality is, it's a dioramic base, and unless the competition month says they're allowed, they're verboten, they're forbidden, so you can't do it. No worries, my friend. And I look forward to seeing what you come up with in July's Car of the Month competition, because you've got an eye for this. You've got that spark, and I want to see you do more. Yes, but enough beating around the bush, my brothers, because it is time to announce the winner of this month's competition. So, without any further ado, start the drum roll, my friends, because the winner of Gaslands UK's Car of the Month competition for June 2023 is Matt Whittam! Yes, congratulations, Matt. Come on down. Second win of the year, my friends. That's right, second win. He absolutely blew us away in April's Car of the Month competition with his entirely paper craft build. And now this month, he has gone to show us that he is a master of more than one material. Oh, yes. Congratulations, Matt. A £35 gift voucher is on its way to you as we speak, my friend. But can we all just take a moment to admire this build? Because my goodness, Matt, Oh, you have gone above and beyond with this, haven't you? And I know you say that it's inspired by orcs. It's a very ramshackle orc war truck looking build. I know it's inspired, but the reality is here, boys and girls, there are almost no 40k parts used on this. And I've gone over this with a fine-tooth comb. I used to be an orc player myself. I think other than a single component from a power claw on the back of that, and maybe the chain winch assembly on that wrecking ball, that is it. The rest of this is done by hand using bits and pieces that we all have access to. 3D printed parts, sure, but a lot of scratch built pieces in plastic and metal and wood, as is right of a ramshackle build. Oh yes, what an absolute, show-stopping build, my friend. Honestly, this is some great work, Matt. And I think this is the key with this competition. It's not just about making something that's the biggest or the scariest or has the most guns or is a massive reference to something. It's about making a solid build that works on so many levels. I love that flatbed assembly on the back of this truck. I love all the detail with the I-beams and the spring leaf suspension and all the nuts and bolts and rivets, and then where the rivets and bolts have come off, you've got these welded on parts. You've got the rope and the string holding on extra door panels as improvised armor. Like even the crew, even they've been lovingly modified, because it's not just stock, it's not just off the frame or off the shelf parts. You've customized the guns, you've adapted a heavy machine gun for the turret gunner. Like, it's, mate, this is good stuff. And this is what Car of the Month winners are made of, my friends. Oh yes. So again, absolutely fantastic work, Matt Whittam. Honestly, mate, you are just going so far with this competition, and I cannot wait to see what you have in store for us for the rest of this year. I mean, just the extra armor on the wheels, just the little panels where some of them are different colors and some have got bullet holes and some are rusted and some are clean, and just, oh, mate, be still my beating heart, because everything we have said in this video, everything is featured here. Honestly, brilliant work. Considering you started with just a burnt out shell and you finished with this, mate, so good, so good. What an absolute banger. Fantastic work, Matt. Fantastic. Oh. And if that's our first place winner, then who is taking second and who is taking third? Well, I can tell you now, boys and girls, that in second place we have, hot on his heels, as you might expect from the analysis. That's right, John Simpson Wedge's entry. Oh yes. What haven't I said already, John? My goodness. Enjoy the £25 gift voucher that's on its way to you, my friend. Because you're so close. You're so close, and it did come down to a knockout, drag-out fight between you and Matt. Oh my goodness. And then finally in third place, as chosen by the sponsor this month, that absolute dastardly devil fox of the Wasteland. That's right, David Bousset. And my friend, enjoy that £15 gift voucher that's on its way to you. And it would not be a new sponsor, new month, if we didn't have a bonus prize, or in this case, a bonus shout out, because he was absolutely head over heels when he saw what you did this month. That's right, I'm talking about Paul Gaynor's build and his gigantic pink tank. Ah, Paul, what can I say? Who doesn't love a gigantic pink tank? It's got a real metal slug feel to it. Like, the turret is so massive for that tiny little body. It feels like everything's been smushed in, like what's normally quite a long-bodied vehicle. It's just everything's been crushed forwards, but no. Wonderful stuff, Paul. So, as always, thank you everyone for taking part this month. I appreciate that, You know, not everyone gets talked about, and believe me, if I had more time in the day, if there were enough hours of sunlight, I would talk about every single one of your builds. You know I would. You know I can. However, this video must come to an end. So, as always, if you enjoy this competition, please leave a like, a subscribe, a comment. Talk to us, my brothers. Take part, my friends. You know, give us your own honest feedback, interpretations. What did you think of the builds? Which ones would you have picked for prizes? Which one did you think was the best or deserving of the wooden spoon? And most importantly, head on over to Big Cartel and buy some of the merchandise, my friends. Oh yes, please someone buy me a mug. I really fancy those mugs. Hashtag buy James a mug. And as always, thank you to all of the members of the admin team that go into the running of this fine community of ours and make this competition possible. As always, thank you to Matt Reeve, Colin Harvard, our new admin members, David Bousset and Darren Phillips, and of course, the master of ceremonies myself, James Hall. Thank you, Wastelanders, and I will see you in July's Car of the Month competition. Goodbye.